Hi, I'm Steve Casely from CBT Nuggets, and this nugget is the second last of our nuggets reviewing the Prince2 themes. This nugget is focused on change, or probably more common term you've heard is change management, to ensure that all changes on the project are processed through an organized change process and that all changes to the project receive appropriate and formal approval before the changes are made to the project. The focus of the change theme is really summed up in this first bullet. Change is inevitable in a project. I don't believe there's ever been a project, unless it is the most minute project that only has a 10-minute duration, and then I'm not sure I would call that a project, but change is inevitable. Change happens, and if change is not managed, we're going to have a project disaster. And those are pretty strong words, but those are words I strongly believe in. Change is inevitable. Change is going to happen, as we'll discuss in just a couple of moments. And if we don't effectively manage the change, we're going to have a project disaster, because no longer are we delivering what it is that the business formally asked us to deliver. We're delivering some deviation from that, which may or may not be approved and appropriate. And as soon as we start to process change, the timeline and the budget for the project are most likely to change, and the project is most likely to become out of control. So change is inevitable, but we need to manage change. And that's the second and key theme we're going to discuss in this nugget, is a formal change management process. And following that change management is going to eliminate this project disaster, and it's going to allow us to manage change and ensure ongoing project success. So those are pretty strong words. If we don't manage change, we're going to have project disaster, and if we manage change, we're going to continue to have project success. And we'll wrap up this nugget with a review of a process that's used in most organizations, where we will have a formal change board, which is a cross-organizational, cross-department change approval that deals with not just changes from our immediate project, but all projects ongoing in the organization. But first, let's dig in a little bit deeper and understand why change is inevitable in our projects. So I firmly believe in the statement that change is inevitable. A project of any size, and again, more than 10 minutes, change is going to happen, and change is going to happen from any of many locations. The business requirements are going to change. The project originally had the scope to implement a new inventory management system. The scope was defined as A, B, and C. But over time, the business requirements have changed. We've implemented a new warehouse. We've developed new product. We've implemented a new order processing system. We've done whatever else business change. And therefore, the requirements for our project is going to change. And maybe the business requirements are simply going to change because we have more detail. So the requirements are not changing so much as the requirements are being refined, which in and of themselves can result in what's perceived as a change to the scope as defined for the project. The organization is going to change. The organization is going to take a new directive. The organization is going to have a focus on growth as opposed to our current focus on cost reduction, or vice versa, or. So again, there's going to be changes coming into our project as a result of operating in a large organization, or the larger business environment. There's going to be competitive. There's going to be government or legislative issues. There's going to be all kinds of reasons why the project is going to change. And within our project itself, there can be technology changes. We find new ways to do things. So change is inevitable. Change is probably going to start on day one of our project, and change is going to continue until day -1 of a project, in that it is fully implemented, and only after it is fully implemented is the business going to finally settle down and say, okay, that's it, we're done. It would be nice to get this one last change, but I guess the project is really done. We're not going to get that one last change. So be prepared for the fact that change happens. And as already discussed, if change happens, but we don't manage change, it's going to result in the project disaster. For the simple reason, as we change the requirements, as we change, we're typically increasing scope. And that's not always the case, but my experience is in projects, most change is related to a scope increase. And as soon as we increase the scope, we're going to increase the dollars and we're going to increase the time for the project. And therefore, if this was to be a 6-month project, and enough change happens, all of a sudden the project has doubled in length. It's now a 12-month project, and instead of being a $50,000 project, it's now a $100,000 project. And that's because every change resulted in increased scope. And again, not every change is incrementally growing, but most changes are, because we're doing refinement, we're getting more detail, we're getting whatever. Or again, conversely, the scope could be decreasing and we're going down. But whatever it is, we're changing the norms for the project. If the business signed up to accept the solution in 6 months and they get it in 12, I'm going to say that's a project disaster. And if the business signed up to take the project for $50,000 and it ends up costing them $100,000, again, I'm going to say that's a pretty strong project disaster. So, knowing that change happens, most changes increases the scope, and therefore the increase in scope is going to increase the dollars and the schedule. How do we prevent project disaster? How do we deal with what Steve says? Change is positive, change is inevitable, and we need to manage change. And if we manage change, I believe change can be seen as positive. So we're working through our project, and we get a change number 1. In order to make this change, or in order to support this new business requirement, a business requirement 1 prime, we need to add 2 weeks of effort and $5,000 of cost. So this is how that project grew. It grew from 6 months to 12 months, I'm going to say 2 weeks at a time, and it grew from $50,000 to $100,000, $5,000 at a time. But this is where change can be positive. We recognize the change, we follow our change process that we're going to review in just a moment in this nugget. We analyze what the change to the business requirement 1 prime is, we document it, and we get it approved. And by getting it approved, our project is no longer defined as a 6-month project. Our project is now a 6-month, 2-week project, and our project is now a $55,000 project. There's a big difference happening here. It may be subtle, but it's a big difference. This change has been reviewed, it's been documented, the impact has been identified, it's been presented to the business for approval, and the business is going to say, you know what? This change to 1 prime is really important to us. Yes, Steve, we approve extending the date of our project by 2 weeks, and yes, Steve, we approve changing the date of the cost of our project by $5,000. Your now new approved project baseline within which you can report project success is now 6 weeks and 2 months. And then we go through change request 2 and change request 3 and change request 4 and change request 45 to the point in time that it is a 12-month project and it is $100,000. And I'm going to say this is positive. And this is project success. And here's the nuance. The end result is identical. I'm delivering a 12-month project for $100,000, and I'm saying I'm delivering total project success and all of this change is deemed as positive for the good of the project, as opposed to the flip side where I didn't manage the project, I delivered the same change, but I surprised the business, and that's the reason for it. That's the difference between disaster and success. Over here, I didn't manage the project, and all of a sudden the project grew from 6 months to 12 months, but I didn't tell anybody. I didn't warn anybody. I didn't approve of it. And all of these changes happened by surprise, and it was a total surprise that the project was 100% over schedule and 100% over budget, and people don't like those surprises. Over here, I managed it, and I got incremental approval. 2 weeks, $5,000 at a time, did it multiple times, and every instance the business said, yes, that makes sense, please proceed. Or what's probably more likely to happen is change request number 2 is going to be, let's keep it simple, another 2 week and another $5,000 change. The business is going to look at it and say, you know what? I understand the change. The change makes sense, but you know what? We can defer that. Let's not do that change right now. Let's keep this as a 6-month, 2-week project, and let's keep this as a $55,000 project. We'll do this later. We'll do this in phase 2 or phase 3. And that's where change is positive. We don't just willy-nilly, unilaterally accept every request for change into the project. We document and we get them approved. And by getting them approved, we allow the business to make sound business decisions that says, no, this change makes sense, but it's not critical now. Let's defer it. Let's do it at a future point in time. And that's where the change is positive. They get the changes they need. They can approve, they can validate, and they defer, or let's say CR3, again, 2 weeks, 5K, is just denied. No, doesn't make sense. It was worth exploring, but if it's going to have that big an impact on the project, we're just going to do it. Where up here, we just did every one of them. We didn't defer anything, we didn't deny anything, we just automatically did them, which again leads to the project disaster. So this is the official change management process that we define for Prince2, that all changes for our project should go through. Now, quick step back to Prince2 terminology. Prince2 refers to all changes as issues. The project has an issue. The project has an unmet requirement. The project has an issue that we have missing functionality being delivered. The project has an issue that we have processes that are not being followed. The project has an issue that all kinds of things are happening on our project that is resulting in off specification. Prince2 defines all of these unmet requirements, missing functionality, missing details in a document as issues when everything is or anything is off specification. Once we analyze the issue and determine that the issue is related to change, it moves from what I'm going to call the issue management process to the formal change management process. And formal change management has 5 steps to it. We're going to identify or capture the change. Change can come from everywhere, but we're going to put a formal process in place to identify and capture the change and log them so that we ensure nothing slips through the cracks. And then as quickly as we can, we're going to analyze or examine the change to determine how large and what the impact of the change is going to be on the project. Then we go through and define and propose what the solution for the change is going to be. In order to implement this change, we need to do this, this, and this. It's going to take this much analysis, this much design, and that's how we end up with the 2-week estimate. With the solution proposed, we move into the approval decision process where we take the change, maybe within the power and authority of ourselves as the project manager to approve. It may be within the power and authority of our project board to approve, or we may need to send it to the larger organizational change board for approval. And then once we get it approved, we go into the implementation process. Now, I want to examine each one of these 5 steps in just a little more detail. So our identify step is not very complex. We simply identify the source of the request. Did it come from the business? Did it come from management? Did it come from the team? Did it come from... And simply understanding who identified the request. And typically we will take it to a name individual. Fred Smith in the business identified this issue that became a change. And the reason we need to identify the source, we typically need to go back for details. As we do further analysis, as we dig deeper and deeper into the change, we're going to need to go back to that named individual from the business to get more details to better understand the change. And then most importantly, we're going to log the change. Nothing can fall through the cracks. Prince2 is a very formal, established process with processes in place to ensure that we're always doing the right things. And one of the ways to make sure we're doing the right things is we log it to ensure that it gets resolved. Doesn't mean it gets implemented, but we log it to ensure it gets resolved. We do the analysis, we do the proposal, and then we may deny it. Or we do the analysis, we do the proposal, and we may defer it. And then we do a very quick validation. We talk to our senior customer. We talk to our project acceptor, or we may have to talk to the project board, is should we even look at it? Here's a request from Fred Smith in the business to implement a new way to put away the inventory in the warehouse. Is this realistic? Is this viable? Is this something you even want us to consider? Or are we going to deny it right off the bat? It's like the validation of the eureka moment during the initiate a project. This is the validation of the eureka moment for the CR. Does this CR warrant further attention? Or as a approval authority, my project board, they're saying, no, this just doesn't make sense. This is not even a good time, a good way, a good place to spend 3 more hours of work on the CR. We're going to deny it now. The most work in the change process is in this step, which is analyze. This is where we do all of the work to truly analyze, to understand the request. This is why we need to know who raised it. We go back to the originator. Let me better understand your request. Let me do some analysis to determine exactly what the request for change is and to determine a preliminary solution for the change request. And we need to make sure that we're doing a fully integrated change process. Typically, newcomers to change will examine a change from the viewpoint of how much is it going to impact my schedule and how much is it going to cost. But a proper change process says, and is this going to change the scope of the project? And is this change in scope approved? What impact is this change going to have on our quality? Are we changing our expectation for quality? Do we need to relook at the quality process? What impact is this change going to have on the risk? And what impact is it going to have on everything else that we're doing on our particular project? So we need to absolutely have a focus on integrated change. And then we're going to do that deeper dive validation of the eureka moment for the CR. We're going to redo the cost-benefit analysis, but just for the change. So the cost benefit of this change is going to be $100 savings here, $250 savings here, and it's going to have a total cost of $5,000. So is this unique change cost justifiable? Not the redo of the entire cost benefit statement for the project, but of course we will be able to bring this individual cost or change cost benefit forward when we're updating our cost benefit at the end of our current stage. And then we're going to revalidate the change based on our new information, based on this better understanding of the change, based on a full understanding of what the total integrated solution for this change is going to be, based on this cost benefit analysis. Project board, do you wish for us to continue? This is the revalidation again. This is the same as the starting up a project validation. With that approval to proceed under our belt, we move on to the next step, which is the solution. This is where we truly define how to do it, how to address, how to implement, how to support the request for change. We examine various alternatives, and then we're going to select the optimal solution. Pretty standard analysis and design stuff, should follow the similar processes that we do or did when we were originally planning our project. Here's alternatives to the solution. Here's our recommended solution. Same thing. Here's the alternatives to this specific change, and here is our optimal solution, and we're going to make a recommendation. We're going to basically take the optimal solution and we're going to recommend it, and we're going to say why we're recommending it. And of course, Prince2 is going to insist that we revalidate the cost benefit as a result of the better information we have. Now that we have designed the solution, do we need to make any changes to the cost benefit of the change? Again, just of the change, not of the entire project, that we just did in the analyze step. And you'll note I don't have an approval step here, because the very next step in the change process is now that we have the formal recommendation in place. We're not validating the eureka moment anymore. We're taking this recommendation forward to our change board for a formal approval. CR approved. Increase your baseline by 2 weeks, $5,000. CR is deferred, or CR is in fact denied. And depending on the size and nature and complexity of the change and or the established processes for your project, the approval may come from multiple locations. And it's even possible that ourselves, the PM, may have approval rights. So as a PM, I may have a CR fund of $10,000 and 4 weeks within the stage. So any change comes in that doesn't exceed my $10,000, 4 weeks within my stage, my project board, my project environment has given me approval to proceed. If this makes sense, if the business user supports this, Steve, you have approval to proceed and simply not burden the project with additional paperwork. Recognizing that this CR fund has nothing to do with my tolerances. I have a project management progress tolerance of plus or minus $5,000 or plus or minus 10%, whatever the number is going to be, for variances against my baseline. That's not what the CR fund is. This CR fund is an additional incremental approval rights that I have as the PM on the project. I don't often encounter projects where I get carte blanche approval for CRs, because the CR typically has more of a business focus, and my focus as a PM is more project delivery focused. So my experience is most CRs are going to go to my project board for approval, but recognizing that different organizations may support PM approval, and PM approval is certainly within the expectations of Prince2. But the project board is typically where I would go for project approval. I'm going to present the complete CR with its recommendation, with its updated cost-benefit justification, and the board is going to approve, defer, deny the CR. And again, the board is probably also going to have an approval threshold. Theirs is going to be a little bit larger. They have as much as $30,000 and 1 month of deviation within their approval for the stage. They're going to review it, remembering that the project board has business resources, custom resources, and supplier resources on it, so they can determine what the appropriate allocation of this fund is going to be and make their decisions to approve within their approved fund. And again, this is a separate fund for CRs. This is not, again, their time and budget tolerances for routine progress against the baseline. As we'll discuss in just a moment in the Nugget series, if it's a large, complex change, or if the change goes across multiple organizational departments, it's entirely possible that the CR may go to a formal organizational change board for approval. So it doesn't matter where the approval comes from myself, from the board, or from a change board. If the project CR gets approved, we're going to take and we're going to update the project plan. I now have a 6-month, 2-week project plan, and I have a $55,000 approved project plan. The term that I keep using is I update my baseline against which I am going to do my measurement for the project. Depending again on the size and nature and complexity of the CR, we may need to go beyond simply updating the project plan. We may get a request from our project board or from our changer board to create a formal exception plan. This CR makes sense to us, but we want to ensure we're taking absolutely the right approach for the project. So Steve, please go ahead and treat this as an exception. It's the same as we've exceeded our tolerances, or we just want to give it that extra due care and attention that we would use if we exceeded the tolerances. Please create a complete exception plan so we can review that and understand the full impact of the change. And our final change management process is not really change management per se, is to implement it, to do the change. And because the change has been integrated into our project plan already, we simply assign the work packages to the team, and the team completes the work. So implementation to me is sort of a formal closing of the CR, saying to the business, the CR has been approved, the CR has been built into the project plan, and the CR is going to be done, not necessarily today, the CR is going to be done in 6 weeks, because that's when it fits into, that's when it makes sense within my overall project plan. So it's simply approval of a CR. It doesn't mean we start working on it tomorrow. It may be an emergency, it may be a critical CR that needs to be worked on tomorrow, but the bottom line is we integrate it into the project plan, we put it into the schedule, it's then just another work package in the schedule, and we follow established Prince2 processes to assign the work package to the team and then manage the successful completion of that work package. And our final discussion point in the Prince2 change theme is this concept of a change board, and I'm going to stick the word project change board in front of it because in all likelihood your organization is going to have multiple change boards. This is a change board focused on project CR change management, change of processes. You may have a configuration change board, you may have an implementation change board, you may have a number of other change boards that approve changes to configuration items, that approve changes to the production system, that approve. So again, this term change board, my experience is often used for multiple purposes throughout the organization, and there's nothing wrong with that. All of these multiple purposes are absolutely bang on. I just want to ensure that we're focused in this discussion on this as a project-based change board focused on approving CRs, but it's not just a change board for my project, it is a cross-project change approval. So all large significant changes are going to go to this change board to ensure that we are supporting the overall org best wishes, best interests, and not just the specific focused best interests of my project. And typically only the large or the cross-departmental changes are going to go to the Organizational Project Change Board, simply because organizational project change boards typically meet on an infrequent basis, maybe weekly, maybe bi-weekly, or I've often been in organizations where the Organizational Project Change Board meets only on a monthly basis, and that's far too infrequent for most routine project changes, with the expectation that most routine project changes are going to be dealt with at my project board. But recognizing that, again, fairly common process is to have this project change board for large cross-departmental organizations to ensure that our overall organizational best interests are being paid attention to. This concludes our nugget on the change theme in Prince 2. This nugget was focused on the fact that change is inevitable, so let's ensure we have change managed to ensure that change is seen as a positive, and all changes are approved to ensure project success. And we do that change management through our established change management process, which has the 5 steps. We identify the change, and we do very quick validation of the eureka moment that yes, this change makes sense, please proceed. And then we analyze the change to ensure that we fully understand what the request for change is going to be, and we do a revalidation of the eureka moment that yes, this makes sense. Then we do the solution, where we evaluate alternatives and make a recommendation for the proposed solution. We reset, or we develop, a cost-benefit statement, and then we present that for formal approval through our project change board, through our project board, or within our power and authority as a project manager. And then finally we build it into the project plan, and we implement the change as part of routine project delivery. And we conclude it with a discussion on the fact that large changes will often go to an organizational project change board to ensure that the project changes are being taken in a larger organizational sense, to ensure that the scarce organizational dollars are being spent in the best fashion. This concludes our nugget on the Prince 2 change theme. I hope this module has been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.